Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on today's event of the Slovak Center for Digital Innovations. We are one of European digital innovation hubs operating in Slovakia. And we have served more than 300 clients, and our statistics are clear. There is a growing demand for artificial intelligence among our clients. And we see especially lively interest among law firms, which are our clients, and we even participate on some projects and some successful implementations. On the other hand, it seems that these trends here are quite individual, and those initiatives are very individual in nature. And we don't see any joint approach, and we even don't see any activities by the state. So I think it will be interesting to see what's going on in neighboring countries. So I would like to welcome you on the presentation. AI in Judiciary and Advocacy in Austria and Germany. We are organizing this today with our partner, Digital Innovation Hub from Austria. And as I'm finished with this short introduction, I would like to hand over to Roland Sommer.
Yes, and before that, Emil, just let me give some practical information for our attendees and presenters. So as you can see, all the presentations except the introduction will be in half-hour blocks. After each block, you'll have chance to ask the question. So if you want to ask the question, just please raise your hand, use the button on the top bar in MS Teams, or you can use the chat message in MS Teams. And questions and answers will follow after each presentation. So not at the end of the webinar, but after each block of the presentation. So feel free to send me the messages via the chat or raise your hand after the presentation, and we'll give you some space to ask the questions or give you the best possible answers. And also, brief disclaimer, we are recording the webinar for educational purposes, and we're going to present it on YouTube of Slovak Center of Digital Innovations. So I hope you're okay with that. If not, please let me know, and we will blur your name out. But the main focus will be on the presentations, and your mics are off, so your voice will be not present in the video. So thank you very much. And now I'll give the space to Mr. Sommer from Austrian Digital Innovation, our partner, Digital Innovation Hub. So Mr. Sommer, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for the kind invitation. I'm just starting to share my screen.
Yes, we can see that. Yeah.
Great, and I put it in presentation mode. My mission today is to tell you or present to you what I believe are the trends in industry. And AI, of course, is one of the most important factors, but I would like to put it into a broader picture. And the idea is that probably all of you will sooner or later be confronted with some of the questions coming from industry on AI, but also on other technologies. And I would like to start my presentation with the question of what comes after Industry 4.0. I hope you are all aware of the term. Industry 4.0 was created back in 2013 by Germany, and the basic idea was to use technologies to improve production and production lines. And now we see that there's a big topic on what comes next. Industry 4.0 is now 12 years old, and the German platform that are the inventors of that said it's already half time. And now quite a lot of companies need to prepare of what will come next. And I will come up with three interlinked concepts. The first one being Industry 5.0, a very creative idea. That comes from the European Commission, and what the first draft was published back in 2021. And the basic idea of Industry 5.0 is that in Industry 4.0, there was a very strong focus on technology. And now this has been extended to 3 other aspects. And these aspects are human centricity, sustainability, and resilience. So these are more soft factor related aspects and not only technology. And I will, in the course of my presentation, bring a few examples and use cases of this concept. The second idea is called Manufacturing X. I'm not sure whether you have ever come across that. That is also an invention by Germany. The basic concept is 2 years old. And the basic idea is that industry sees if they would like to improve, for instance, their production line, it needs a lot of effort, a lot of money to have small improvements of, I don't know, 3% there, 5% there, etc. And the idea of Manufacturing X is that if you would like to have efficiency gains, it is not anymore within an organization, but increasingly between organizations. So there you can save a lot of money, you can raise the efficiency, and you create federated structures so that you do not have a central repository of data, but a federated approach. And I will come to that also in a minute. And this is a little bit the answer of Europe and Germany as a response to the particularly American hyperscalers. So that in principle, it's up to you to decide what you can do with your data. And that is a secure and sovereign data exchange. And the third concept is from the Austrian Society for Production Engineers, and it's about cognitive systems. And with cognitive systems, the basic idea is that if you have a machine, you can interact with that machine. For instance, if you have a driller and you would like to drill a hole in the wall and you have the wrong drill, the machine would tell you, please use another drill because this one is not able to do. And we see, and particularly with generative AI, where you can start communicating with machines in language, this is one of the most important developments we recently see. And when you look at, and that's why I've written there mini AI, when you imagine you have a big machine, for instance, there are 2 options. Either you have one big artificial intelligence system that covers the whole machine and you need quite a lot of learning data and it's quite complex, or you can come up with a lot of little or small AI applications that you can easily train, and the humans, they synchronize the various or the different AIs. Now these are 3 elements where we believe that this will come in the near future and that companies need to prepare for that. To put it in another perspective, and that is something we see very strongly, companies, and we call it triple transformations. If, for instance, a company would like to introduce an AI application, they have to have know-how or expertise to decide on which AI model to use. They have to decide on the enterprise architecture, on the cloud. They have to get the data integration right. They have to make sure that the quality of the data is correct. Of course, they need to build an IT architecture. They need to use open source software. They need to come up with security issues, etc. So this is a very complex systems. At the same time, we see that this sort of go for green, that has a huge relevance for industry because also it improves efficiency. There are several elements towards circularity. You have the reporting, you have the marketing, you need to come up with eco-design. We see first use cases, and I will present one very briefly, where the production has been adapted to energy transition. For instance, the digital product passport from the eco-design regulation is one of the most important cornerstones. So again, here companies need to prepare for that. And when we talk to to a lot of people that help companies implementing these systems, they tend to say when the project is not successful, the reasons are rarely ever technology, but humans or organization. So all the topics, and we call it the system, human, organization, technology, has a couple of key elements, and if you do not take them into consideration, your project might fail. And just to do a little bit of bullshit bingo, there are many aspects on this social transformation, this interface between human, organization, and technology. And because we're talking about trustworthy AI, I would like to just highlight trustworthy AI, because you have to set the AI systems in such a way that they support the humans that work with the system in an ethical way. And there are many aspects. There are already standards being developed on this trustworthy AI element. Mr. Behol asked me to come up with a little bit on what's AI in principle. And so I come up with something like a definition. AI is about using intelligence AI systems in specific areas or applications. So they are based on machine learning methods in computer science. They are based on mathematics. They are based on statistics. And of course, there are also these so-called neural networks. And the most important aspect is machine learning methods are used to search for recurring patterns in data, to recognize regularities, to divide data into classes. This can be done rule-based, for instance, by mathematics or physics, by statistical methods, or by neural networks. And we see three elements. The one is supervised learning. So there's a human who comes up with, for instance, and you know that if it's a picture is a cat or a dog, it's a human that tells the algorithm whether it's a cat or a dog. So this is supervised learning, where we need the humans to train the AI. The second one is unsupervised learning. There you have a ground truth for training data. So if it's below zero, then it's not water, but it's ice, so to say, to simplify it a little bit. And there the AI determines a normal state of the system. And the third one is reinforcement learning. It's a third fundamental approach, and that involves pre-trained neural networks. And there, lawyers, there are a lot of elements regarded to that, because if a project or a decision is wrong due to reinforced learning with a pre-trained neural network, who is responsible for that? So this is one of the biggest questions. Now, I promised you that I would come up with a couple of examples for Industry 5.0 and Manufacturing X. And the first one is human-machine interaction. And the first example I would just very briefly explain to you is from the Austrian Institute of Technology. And it's an AI-based support for visual inspection. And you see these devices there, and you have a visual inspection on the quality of this device. And you might know that if you control something with your eye, if it's when it's the first example, the first product, you're very sure what you have checked, also the 10th and the 100th. But if you have to check like 500 or more, you sometimes might come into position that you think, I'm not sure whether I've checked this part of this product already, so I do it again. And here it's this visual inspection, it's smart glasses that show you what you have already looked at, so you can speed up this visual inspection process. A second example is again from the Austrian Institute of Technology and a company called Industrielogistik Linz, which is a daughter company of voestalpine. And they're the basic ideas, and there might be a lot of elements that are also interesting for you. You see on the left-hand side a crane, and this crane shifts coils to a train. And the basic idea is to improve the working conditions for workers, that you do not necessarily need to sit in your crane in this hall at voestalpine, but you might do it remotely. And here you can see it on the right-hand side with a gaming chair with different screens, etc., that you can remotely control the crane. And this is some element of work from home, also in the manufacturing area. And this had been hugely successful. And this gives a glimpse of what you could expect in connection with human centricity and more flexibility in your work. And the third example is, again, image-based defect and anomaly detection by a research institution called VRVIS in Vienna and RHI Magnesita, the company. And they have a fireproof material, RHI Magnesita. And here you do this anomaly detection, and it's image-based. And when the algorithms come up with a spot where they believe there's something wrong, then it's a human that will make the final decision of whether there is an anomaly or not. So in that case, it's a good example of how an AI algorithm and a human work together to come up with better solutions. The second big topic is sustainability. And I will just come up with one example, and it's about digital energy twin. A digital twin is a digital representation of a physical product. And the basic challenge is to reduce energy prices and to become independent of gas, oil, etc., to shift the energy supply to renewable energy sources. And then the question is, if you have photovoltaics, if you have a heat pump, if you have, for instance, excess heat from your production processes, and it has been stored somewhere, you have to come up with an optimal solution for different weather conditions, different production conditions, etc. And for that, you can use a digital energy twin that calculates you in different situations what would be the best solution. And this has been successfully performed by a brewery in Austria called Gösser. And they used, and sorry that some of the information is in German, and they came up with an optimized system where they can guarantee 100% renewable energy sources. And they use also some of the waste is a part of the brewery process, and can use it for energy input. They use district heat, they use the sun, they use biogas from wastewater, etc. And there they managed to have a brewery or a production process 100% on renewable energy. And this digital energy twin, again, is based also on artificial intelligence. Now, the third element is resilience, and here you can see the Suez Canal, and the idea is we could see that because of one ship, the whole Suez Canal was blocked a couple of years ago. And the basic idea is to use it again there, use artificial intelligence to have more transparency on your supply chains. And there I bring an example from Siemens, the so-called trusted supply chain, where you can trace your data, you get certificates and gain insights into that data. And there you can decide and make transparent where your data flow is. And maybe you can see it, but this is more to give you a smile. This is an example that pears are grown in Argentina and being packed in Thailand. And if you can come up with something like a trusted supply chain, the consumer can decide whether he would take this product or a product that has not been shifted all over the world. I would also very briefly talk about Manufacturing X, because this is something that I would believe is also relevant and interesting for you. And the basic idea is that we do not see any more linear supply chains, but increasingly something what we call complex supply networks. The basic idea is that increasingly we see that companies are not only in competition to other companies, but that whole supply chains are in competition with other supply chains. And these supply chains that are more innovative, more agile, more flexible, they will win a competitive edge. And how can these supply chains be more innovative, flexible, agile? That is by transferring data, but also sometimes transferring AI algorithms across companies. And this is a key element also of a European, in German, but also increasingly Austrian industry policy. And there it's about data sovereignty of complete supply chains and of Europe. And we see a lot of initiatives around these so-called data spaces in various actors, in the public sector, in the manufacturing sector, smart cities, energy, retail, tourism, and so on. And it's increasingly about how to transfer data across the value chain. And just to cite a few examples, NIS2, the Cyber Resilience Act, the Digital Product Passport, these are all regulations, and all these regulations are increasingly being based on how to transfer data along the supply chain. And in that case, and this would then be my final remark, it's up to the owner of the data to decide what is being done with these data. So that is this element of sovereignty. And I'm representing a European digital innovation hub. Here you can see the slides of the AI5 Production.at. We're more focused on artificial intelligence, Industry 5.0 in the manufacturing area, but I think many of these trends in industry are of high relevance for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sommer. We'll fluently continue with another introduction from Professor Dr. Christian Wolff, Dean of the Faculty for Informatics and Data Science, University of Regensburg. And Mr. Wolff will present on the topic of brief overview of current AI projects in a German justice system and further prospects for the use of AI. Mr. Wolff, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. Originally, I would have liked to present it together with Bettina Mielke, my colleague, but she is not available today, so I try to give a short overview. Unfortunately, there are two risks. The one is that I'm not a lawyer or jurist, and the other is that I translated my slides using DeepL, so there is a double risk of not getting the terminology right, but I'll try my best to do it anyway. So, starting point is that due to the digital transformation in the justice system, we have electronic files and we have electronic legal transactions, which means that we don't, a lot of things are already digitally available. You don't send a paper-based letter or a text, but you send it via specific electronic channels. This, of course, is an important a precondition for introducing AI, because without digital data, you cannot do machine learning on a broad scale. And so this is an important infrastructure framework aspect, you could say. At the same time, there are developments in the direction of doing court proceedings with electronic means, like having online sessions, like discussing. We have had a large project on that in the recent time, but I won't talk about it now because it's not AI-based yet, meaning the introduction of more structured texts in court, in civil court proceedings. And the third aspect, which is important, and this is, of course, the main focus of my talk today, is in how far artificial intelligence is already used in the German justice system and what is ahead of us, of course. So I will mention some projects which have been running in the recent years, and of course I will mention further prospects of introducing large language models for different aspects of legal transactions. So, and then there will be a short conclusion, handing over to my colleagues who will go into more depth with their specific projects in the direction of AI usage. Okay. Now what does AI in the justice system mean? We have heard from Mr. Sommer, and I won't repeat it in detail, that there are different strands of AI. There's the symbolic or knowledge-based classic AI, or good old-fashioned AI, meaning expert systems with the acquisition, representation, and evaluation of large-scale explicit knowledge. In recent years, for example, this is being done by setting up large knowledge graphs, and we have we have the broad field of machine learning methods. We have just heard about it. We have unsupervised learning, for example, when you have clustering algorithms. You have supervised learning, which involves more human interaction because someone has to provide feedback on the correct data when you need classification training sets. And of course, we have the broad field of neural networks, deep learning, the transformer models introduced in 2017, and the current generative large language models. Interesting enough, when you look at large language models closer, you will find all three major methods of machine learning: unsupervised, supervised, and reinforcement learning at different points in the preparation of the large language models, actually. So when we come to the judiciary, the question is, where could we need AI support? And for the projects which have been developed in recent years, there are two major issues. It's either quantity, like mass proceedings, for example, the German diesel scandal with hundreds of thousands of claims by people with not correct motors in their cars. And we have the large field of traveler claims where people have delayed flights and then claim a recompensation from the airline companies. And these are proceedings which go into the dimension of 100,000s per year. On the other hand, we have large-scale proceedings, for example, in construction law, where you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of pages of texts which have to be analyzed, which have to be compared. So these are quite different issues. On the one hand, simpler data extraction problems where you basically you do named entity extraction, and on the other hand, the handling of very large scale proceedings. And what can AI do about it? It can help us with extracting metadata. It can help us. I talk mainly about civil cases, but it may also be helpful in criminal justice cases. And you will hear from Professor Adrian in a second more, I guess, because it's one of his projects. One problem is also that in German law, court proceedings and rulings have to be anonymized before they can be published. And that's really a bottleneck for large-scale data provision. We only have 1% of all judgments given by the German courts which are published because they cannot, so far, not be fully automatically published. That's a problem which is being solved, of course, but still there is a deficit with regard to available data. So just to give you some examples, air passenger complaints in 2019, it was 100,000. Then due to Corona, there was a decline. But again, from 2023 onwards, again, we have very large amounts concentrating at those courts which are close to the airports. For example, Königs Wusterhausen, you may not have heard of that small town, but it's close to Berlin airport, and the court there is responsible for cases relating to the Berlin airport. We have Cologne because Lufthansa has its legal seat there, and there is also a large airport. We have Frankfurt and we have Erding close to Munich. Those are the courts which have to handle the mass cases related to air travel. And in 2023, we had alone 125,000 lawsuits which have been handled by the legal tech company Flightride. And then the court started discussing AI usage, and they teamed up with IBM. The two most mentioned project, Frauke and Olga, all acronyms relating to the location and to the function, like Frankfurt Urteilskonfigurator elektronisch, or Olga means Oberlandesgericht, which is a higher court of appeals. assistant, and they are using IBM Watson, whatever that means. IBM Watson is a marketing brand introduced by IBM based on their decades-long tradition of natural language technology development. So IBM actually, of course, is a leading company in the domain of natural language processing, and it's, let's say, kind of a toolbox out of which you can develop relevant tools, and Frauke and Olga are tools which are currently in use in German courts. Unfortunately, the screenshots are in German. They couldn't be translated, I'm sorry, but they just shall give you some impression. You have a user interface where you can enter structured data like the number of the file or the type of the case which is being discussed. For example, in this case, it's something related to the weather, like fog as a reason for flight delay. And then the system automatically is able to extract relevant data, like who poses the claim, who is the defendant, what's the flight number, what's the destination, what's the airport origin, what's the length of the travel, what's the duration of the travel, and so on and so forth. Because there's a relatively simple system of classifying flight delays, and you have to precisely make sure in what time frame your case is and what reason for the delay can be discerned. So that's not too complicated. And then the system suggests some standard texts which are selected on the base of the extracted metadata. And it's just a suggestion. It's not the robo-judge. It's just something the judges may work with. So it's quite simple. It's metadata extraction based on prior machine learning based training of relevant decisions. And this is the end. You see it's in German. Unfortunately, again, some texts are suggested, like on the right hand here. If fog is the reason, then some explanation for a possible reason to grant some money or not grant some money is given, and this is prepared by the system, and then it's quite easy for the judge to compile the judgment with the help of this tool. The other one, Olga, is helpful with the diesel cases. So in this case, it's not about flight and location and flight time, but it's about type of motor, type of contract. Is it just a normal purchase? Is it leasing? Is it rent? Whatever. So at what time frame, what range in kilometers the car has been driven so far, how old is the car, how expensive was the car, which motor is it, and so on and so forth. Simple metadata extraction, again, based on prior machine learning based training. So that's the status now, and already some Bundesländer in Germany, for example, Lower Saxony, have started introducing more powerful AI means. MACI, which means mass case AI, in German KI, Künstliche Intelligenz, support. They try to actually use transformer or large language models for different functions. And in this case, it's not a tool for a single specific type of problem, but something which may be adopted to different issues. In this case, again, sorry, it's in German, different files are compared, and then the system finds comparable, similar cases which may be used just like a translation memory, you could argue, which can be used for the further analysis and the preparation of the judgment. And last year, Bavaria, together with North Rhine-Westphalia, started a large project with the development of a specific large language model for the judiciary. This is ongoing. We don't have any results yet. The project has started, and It took some time getting the legal conditions right, copyright and so on and so forth. So we are all very curious what will come out of that. How helpful will a specific judiciary large language model be, and for what use cases can we use it? But that's still in the future. So we are preparing for the evaluation of that and preparing to think about possible use cases, but we don't have it yet because the researchers in Munich and in Cologne, they're still working on that. So but still, at the same time, of course, we think about what could we do with it. Of course, indexing, visualization of facts, extraction of metadata, that's already working. We've seen that. Automatic classification, but also we expect that we will have much more support in the direction of actual text generation, not just matching the right prepared paragraph for a fog or for mechanical problem like in the travel delay, but much more flexible, much more open for different legal problems. Just like we use a large language model in our everyday work, we would expect that specific legally trained models will help in composing legal texts and making them better, like rewording, smoothing, translation, also maybe legal visualization as an additional help issue, and of course legal chatbots, dialogue systems, which may help at the entry level. This is, of course, something lawyers already do because they, for their law firm, can publish chatbots which help people to get into contact with lawyers. In how far the judiciary can offer chatbot services for the general public is still under debate because it's also a legal problem. And of course, document analysis, comparison. I briefly mentioned our basis document, basic document problem or project where we designed a user interface which should help in legal proceedings for a more structured and easy to analyze presentation and structuring of text. For that, AI help, which we don't have yet, might be something getting us along as well, I guess at least. So summing up, we also have dangers. Everybody knows it. You can't really rely on the content. We have a lack of traceability and a lack of explainability. It's also not really clear whether a dynamically generated output from some large language model is really better than curated and well-prepared text we have prepared in advance, like how judges and prosecutors work today. They don't start with a blank sheet of paper, but for many cases they already have, of course, templates and prepared paragraphs and whatever. We have to train people. Prompting is an art or a craft in itself. You can reach much more when you have better prompts, and they can be a lot of work, and that can be the major difference between good and bad AI-generated text output. Of course, we shouldn't hand over the core area of legal activity to the large language models. They should be a tool, a helping system, but they should not remove activity of lawyers or judges. And of course, there are some issues like automation bias, that people might believe that something which is generated automatically could be better. And we have some other cases of bias regarding the question with what text we train and what is the outcome. Of course, we have numerous data protection and copyright issues. And as I mentioned already, we are waiting for the first government-driven judiciary-specific large language models available probably later on this year, maybe next year, I don't know exactly, but within some time. So summing up, we shouldn't forget that digital transformation is not AI only. There's still a lot to do with better user interfaces, better digital processes, better digital process management where you don't need AI necessarily. So we shouldn't focus on AI alone. AI offers many opportunities, but isn't the only thing to do. But something which should be accompanied with other digital transformation issues. So, but summing up, we hope that we will improve the accessibility of justice, that we will get greater efficiency and greater effectiveness, because we also have a human resource bottleneck in the judiciary. The cases become more complex. The courts are struggling to stay up with the demand, and any AI support may be helpful in that situation. So that's my short introduction. Thank you very much for your patience, and I hand over to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Wolff. I'll give an opportunity to our attendees. If you have any questions for Mr. Sommer or Professor Wolff, now's the chance. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand or turn on the microphone. No questions there. Okay, so we'll continue with presentations. And the first block of presentations will be Mr. Klaus Messner, BAMA, from the Department of Legal Informatics and Information and Communication Technology, Ministry of Justice of Austria, and his topic will be the use of artificial intelligence in the Austrian justice system. Mr. Messner, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello again. My name is Klaus Messner. I'm working for the Ministry of Justice in Austria. I hope you already see my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Okay. I want to give you today a short overview about AI use cases, which we are already using in Austria in our ministry. And yeah, my department is for legal informatics and ICT. ICT stands for information and communication technology. On the first slide, we will see some red and some green tiles of processes which are already going on, or processes we want to approach soon, hopefully, and also processes who didn't work. And we will talk about it later too. But let's start with the start of AI in Austria, in the Justice of Austria, in the justice system. It's all about digital and physical mail income. So we started to analyze all our incoming data and try to classify, to make a classification, and to put it in the right direction, and really bring up a relief for all our personnel, which so long have to deal with all the incoming data, physical data, letters, of course, because even nowadays there are still coming a lot of paperwork too. So that was a very important step, and I will show you another slide later. Another very important area is the speech recognition. I think we are using with Dragon Natural Speaking one of the market players who's out there, and we are using it for our speech recognition, also for the support of our judges. There's another research project ongoing. It's all about image recognition, movement detection in surveillance videos. So in our prisons, there are some cameras installed, and these cameras, for example, will detect if someone clench his fists and try to hit somebody else. And then these cameras will alert, fully automated, the officer. So that's also an ongoing project to improve the security of our prisons in the future, hopefully. One of our very most successful stories, you can say so, is the anonymization of court decisions in Austria. So far, we have a completion rate of about 80 to 85%. So we are not still at the hopefully 100%, which we will reach in future. But it's a very important ongoing project, and we are using, of course, natural language process technique in it to do so. One of our future goals is to have an LLM machine for court decisions for our staff, because as you can imagine, nowadays on every mobile phone, on every computer, you have some access to some sort of large language model, and therefore you have very many issues about data protection. Another important thing is the speech-to-text support in future for our staff. But let's start with the next slide, and I will show you in 2017, we started with the already mentioned incoming documents process. And as you can see, there were until then, there were a lot of manual process steps in it. And of course, even nowadays, the bottleneck of it is still the first step, the preparation of the scanned input data. Because as I also mentioned, even nowadays, you get a lot of data in physical by letters and by papers. And therefore, you will need really some high performance scanners to get all this unstructured data in a structured way, and to get all the very important metadata out of it. Because only with the metadata you are available to know which documents you have and who's the right owner of it and who needed these documents in the further process. So that was a very important step, and we learned a lot from it. And nowadays it's very common, and all our incoming documents, they of course were scanned, and we extract all the metadata we can extract from it to make sure that the documents reach the right destination. Next step was in 2018. It started with the analysis of investigative data, which is much more complex than the normal incoming documents, as you can imagine, because after each house search, for example, you get a whole data lake, maybe of unstructured data in an unstructured way, and it's very hard to find in this data some evidence. And therefore, also our police was overwhelmed by all the data and case numbers, of course, and so we decided to bring in another unit to support our police unit as well, of forensic experts, and to support the whole process in finding evidence in crime cases, for example. Maybe some of you know some of the very common software products which very often were used around the globe. For example, is X-rays forensics or Chainalysis in matters of cryptocurrency betrayal issues, and of course Cellbrite for mobile forensics. Maybe you have heard also some news in the last weeks. They had some issues with data protection too. But to be honest, Cellbrite mobile forensics is still one of a few products which working quite well in mobile forensics, because due to many different types of mobile cell phones nowadays, it's really hard to extract all the data in a right way and bring them in a structured way so that a judge or attorney can really use them for finding evidence. So that's also very important. In 2021, we started another process. It's also the automated scanning and the linking of situations of legal databases, like we already seen from the colleague before from Germany. There you can see you have in our texts, of course, a lot of aberrations, of law aberrations, and therefore you will get a highlighted match, and you easily can access into the respective paragraph very easily. And on the right side of the screen, you will have a summary similar to the German summary, which you already seen before. And of course, you get more detailed information about comments, decisions, similar decisions. So it's easy to access all the information you need to make a decision afterwards. There's also some provider, I think, for small and middle companies out there. I think it's EndNote. I found it over the internet, but there are plenty others if you want to give it a try, because of course, for all of this process, you need a lot of trainings data, and of course we are lucky because we get a lot of trainings data because of the court decisions, and I think this is one of the KPIs in all of this. AI for anonymization and court decisions in 2022. Very important step for us in finding all the personal information and get rid of them automatically to really relieve our staff too. Because until then, all of this personal information of the deletion of this personal information were done by hand. And that was really a manual process which cost us a lot of women and manpower. And so, as you can imagine, this was a very important step for us to bring that in. And you can see nowadays, I already said it, up to 80% of all the personal information of parties, for example, were deleted by our AI system without using any support from a human. So that's also very, very important for our work process. And if we go a little bit in detail in that, you can see, of course, you have a lot of input. We have a lot of input about that process because we have a lot of court decisions, and this is our perfect training data for it, of course. And it's still an iterative process where we always check for our machine learning processes in the background and try to improve them, of course. And this is also done by the so-called natural language processing, NLP. And for us, in that case, there is some under process, the named entity recognition, the based approach. This is one of the most important ones for us so far. It's all about tagging. It's all about word tagging and bringing them into some sort of similar tags, if you want to say so. I will give you a short example in the next input. And why we are doing that, we want to build up entities, and we need these entities to build up our entity model, and of course for our anonymization proposal, and for all the annotations too. And when I talk about tagging, this is what I mean with it. That's very important to check. Okay, North America is a country, for example. US is also a country. You have to tag all the important stuff and train the machine with it to get the results which you want to have at the end. And for us, of course, the result is always to delete on the first glance the names, because there we have a lot of problems with data protection. I think that's across whole Europe, and therefore this process is very, very important. And just I want to show you a quick overview about our core so far and why we are still can say we are using some sort of low-grade artificial intelligence. And if you look in the middle, you have Stanford NLP and Spacey NLP. Both of them are so-called open source libraries, which you can, of course, download, I think, from the net and use for free. And these are our cores, and we feed them with our training data of decisions. And we are lucky we have a lot of training data, because if you don't have the trainings data, just the libraries won't solve your problem. And as we have as well some dictionaries linked together at the end to check for names, for example. And of course, we also check over the internet for some resources, open sources, which we can get to come to the best result for us. So Stanford NLP and Spacey NLP is used within our organization. I think there are plenty others out there, but that works quite well for us. And it's open source. That's also a very good point. Next point is the chatbot I already mentioned. We used this chatbot in our Justice Online. It's a service environment for the status of proceeding, for inspection of files, land register access, etc., etc. And we use this chatbot there to give the people some sort of advice and we try to give them an easier search method on the page. But that didn't work quite well, and therefore in 2025 in January, so 2 months ago, this chatbot was cancelled because people, the cost-benefit ratio was not right, and it was too little used by all our parties at the end. I mean, this chatbot system is still active. You can find it in the Ministry of Finance in Austria. That's why I gave you this address down there, so you can still check the information. Of course, it's only in German, but yeah, if you want to check it, you can do it. And as you can see, there were some bullet points at the beginning, some main topics which you can choose, and regarding if you choose, you get an answer. And all these answers on the first step were given by experts, of course, and stored by them. And the idea is from prompting of the people, the machine learns and starts giving more accurate answers with each iteration process. And that's the main thought behind it. But it didn't work quite well for us, and so we canceled it. Use cases currently being implemented or planned. Yeah, metadata extraction, pleadings, and documents. We want to improve in general the extraction of metadata. There's still a lot of work for us to do. It's not an error-free system now, and we will have a lot of iteration rounds to get to the 100% hopefully in future. And of course, identification of similar court files is also very important, because the workload is start getting bigger and bigger, and we really need to relieve our personnel. Avoidance of diverging case law is also one big point, and another big goal would be a large language model trained under the conditions of European data protection or our legal context. As you know, you can't prevent your employees of using artificial intelligence nowadays, because you have it everywhere, even on your smartphone. So you will have sooner or later some problems with all the data protection, with the strict data protection of Europe. And so we try to give them something instead. One possible solution could be some company policy of Microsoft Copilot we are already testing, meaning that they have access through a company policy to this LLM, and using this LLM with the data stored in Europe, and the data will never be used for other training methods. Because the problem is, if some employees using so-called free AI tools, it's never free. You have to pay it by your data, or you have to pay it by watching some advertisements. It's always the same. So nothing is for free, and therefore data protection is a big concern, I think. Not only about state ministries, also about private companies, of course. And on the first presentation, we were told that our data, we can decide what to do with our data, but we also have to protect this data, because there are many other models out there who really absorb all the data if they can. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a devil circle, because on one side you need all the data protection to be secure, and I think Europe is one of the last lighthouses out there at the moment. And on the other side, all these laws makes you slower, of course. And yeah, you know, the other continents, the development there and the research there in artificial intelligence is much faster than in Europe. So it's a little bit of a devil circle. You will need both sides, I think. So how can AI improve our working environment? Of course, by reducing the workload. That's very important for us, and to improve the quality of our work. But I have to say, by all our methods, the last decision must be made by a human. So it's not a robot's decision made, and it's not just a human in the loop, for example. The last decision must be made, especially in justice matters, by a human. And so this is also very important for us. And of course, beware of data protection and data security, especially if you're using so-called free tools. Sooner or later, you will need something more professional and to secure what is going on with your data if you prompt your data into an AI system, for example. Hopefully, in the future, maybe we will have some domain models which are perfectly trained for justice cases. I think this is also some approach from the European Union that would be really beneficial for all the member states, I think. So yeah, that could be also a great solution for all of us. Thank you again. That's what was my last slide so far.
Thank you very much, Mr. Messner. Any questions? Yes, Professor Schweighofer.
Thank you very much. May I ask you, what's the reason why it's more work? Is it the number of cases or the complexity of cases?
I think it's, to be honest, both. It's also the number of cases and the complexity too. The workload. I mean, you cannot resolve the problem just with human power. You won't have enough money or enough budget to pay them. So you will need a lot of support of artificial intelligence. Yeah.
And Mr. Messner, do you have dedicated teams at your ministry to process and feed these large language models?
Yes, we have. I think there are about 50 people who are working overall for this artificial intelligence machine, and hopefully in future we will need more staff, because we also want to have some large language model or small language or domain language model for justice cases too. So that will be very important. Yeah,
but you're building up your own custom language model at the ministry.
No, we wanna. Hopefully, we can do that in the future. But nowadays, we just analyze our texts, our training data so far.
Thank you. Any other questions? Please raise your hand. If not, thank you very much, Mr. Messner. We're very happy to have you here. We'll continue with another presentation, and the floor will, I'll give the floor now to Professor Dr. Axel Adrian and his son, if I'm correct, Aurelius Adrian, notaries and lawyers and legislative experts, and they will present the topic use of the AI technology and automating workflows for attorneys and notaries. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us here. I hope you can hear us and see our presentation.
Yes, we can see you and see the hear you and see the presentation. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. So the usability of AI technologies and workflow automation for attorneys and notaries, is our talk today. We just want to introduce us a little bit. So I'm Axel Adrian. I have two roles, let's say. I'm a notary here in Nuremberg, Germany, with let's say 5 people who are legally educated, and let's say 20 employees. And my second role is I'm a honorary professor at the Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen-Nuremberg, and so I do some research projects, and of course I try to do some automation in my office. And so this is the projects are, let's say, leak, anger, and rage. Though this was mentioned by Mr. Wolff. So this is about anonymization of court decisions. And the biggest project is DIREGA. So it's a question of using AI for the workflow of notaries and, let's say, commercial registers in Germany. And all of these projects, they are funded, let's say, with about 5 million euros. And we are a huge team at the Friedrich Alexander University to do some research on these AI issues.
And as you can see, my CV isn't as long as my father's. However, I'm a student of computer science at the Friedrich Alexander University. And as far as my expertise goes, I've been working in my dad's office as a student of computer science, also doing legal tasks since 2019. And so together we have tried to implement prototypes and solutions for automation in the notary's office, and which has now resulted, we're going to mention it later, in the foundation of a company called Auxilico. Again, we'll touch on it more a little later. And I was also formerly employed at the chair for corpus and computer linguistics, in which I was part of the LEAK project, which also, as my dad mentioned, covered the anonymization of court decisions. So we want to begin by outlining the situation that we can observe, at least in Germany. A little disclaimer, we are mainly active in Germany, so if some of the things don't apply to other countries, we're truly sorry for that. But at least in Germany, we can observe that there is strong demographic change, which leads to a lack of employees that can solve complex issues. And additionally to this, we can observe increasing complexity of everyday problems. This is also caused by legislative measures such as money laundering, which is a EU regulation and should apply to all EU countries. The task of anonymization, as previously mentioned by our previous speakers, and furthermore, there's more legislative measures such as the UVZ, which in this case is the obligation to store data in cloud systems, which across the board in many legal professions is an issue. And obviously globalization and international law, the applicability of international law for everyday legal problems. However, on the contrary, which is a positive development, we can see there's a great willingness of startups to solve new issues with modern AI solution. And this is also in part caused by the accessibility of AI being more prevalent for startups. And however, this also causes a more dispersed software landscapes. We can see that a lot of startups produce a lot of tools for specific issues. However, not one large tool being there to provide or to accomplish many jobs. So as maybe 10 years ago, you would have one specialized tool that could perform many jobs. However, now with modern complexity in problems and new issues, we have one tool for one job, which leads to many tools being present in software landscapes, which leads to the necessity of AI-ready office tech,
which is not established yet. So this is the problem, let's say. Okay.
And our research questions, what we're trying to clarify in this presentation are, on the one part, can AI already be used today in law firms, and do office tech solutions support automation with AI, which is what we're trying to solve.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the idea of a workflow in a notarial process. So of course, first you have to have an acquisition of a client. Without a client, you will not have any work to do. So you have to communicate with the client, and then you have to do some laundering act investigation, what is really a pain point for notaries here in Germany. We spend, let's say, 10% of our workflow on this issue without being paid for that, of course. Then you, of course, have to do the main task to draft a contract. And at the end, you have to notarize this contract. So you have to read it out loud and make clear everybody has understood everything. And after that, of course, you have to, do this enforcement of this deed. So you have to, let's say, file it in the land register or in the commercial register. Of course, you want to get your bill paid. And at the end, you have to do some archiving of files and deeds. And of course, in a way, you find it later on if you need it again. So we have the problem that at the end, the notaries now become a big problem. Then the ministry is thinking about doing some anonymization on these notary deeds, which are at the end published in the commercial register. There was a big problem here, and there's a new court decision of the European Court of Justice from the October 2024, which now is a big discussion in the notary offices. So our project, Anger, and the former project, the project we want to have afterwards, Rage, is about the automated anonymization. And now we want to use our pipeline, also our AI tool, also for this automated anonymization on files of notaries. But this is only anonymization. But the big new project is DIREGA. So we want to have an automated reasoning machine, and this reasoning machine should help us in these 3 steps. So what this picture wants to show is we have, of course, a lot of steps in a workflow of a standard notarial process. And of course, in the market, there are now already because of the huge number of startups, Aurelius mentioned it, we have a lot of tools we could use in this workflow. And the problem is these tools have to work together. And this is a problem in our daily work. These tools do not work together. And so the whole workflow is not automated yet. And this was the idea of a workflow of a lawyer. Now let's hear what a technical expert says about that.
Well, looking at it from a more computer science perspective, we can see that some of the tasks can be run in parallel, some of the tasks are dependent on each other, and this is something that is crucial to be modeled in order to have a system that can manage all of these tasks and all of these components, software components, so to speak, to work together with each other. And as you can see, each of the steps in the workflow we showed before is numbered 1 through 8. And this is because for most of these steps, there are already tools that can be used. For example, in client acquisition, most law firms have websites that on which a client goes and then afterwards hopefully instructs that lawyer to do work for them. And in step 2, for example, you have client communication, and specifically on the communication between client acquisition and client communication in general is mentioned because, of course, onboarding checklists like forms, Notarnau is a product in Germany that is specifically for notaries that have static checklists that can be hosted and provided on.
Let's say 20% of the offices in Bavaria uses Notarnau at the moment. Yeah.
And we have an own development ourselves, which is called FormAux. I would say it can cope more dynamically with the data. However, you see the point. In step 2, there are software solutions already used. For step 3, there are also software solutions like friends of mine, of ours in Munich, that have a startup company that does money laundering investigation automatically. And we also have an own development for the documentation of these investigation results and
so on.
And so on. And we have already mentioned DIREGA, and it continues. As you can see, there are a lot of software solutions that play a role in each step of the workflow entirely. However, there is not one software solution that on one hand can model the complete workflow and on the other hand complete all of the jobs necessary in the workflow. So if we look at this from the outside perspective, we don't really have a software that can be labeled under alpha. And alpha should be the software, should be the office tech software that can manage all of the software required to fulfill the small tasks that coalesce in this workflow diagram. So talking about AI, we first have to establish what is AI and which part of AI can be used. And I know many people always start their presentations with what is AI, but I think to get a better idea of which tools can be used in which section of the workflow and for which issues, it is important to reiterate. And so we define artificial intelligence as the study of how we can make the computer do things that humans can still do better at the moment. So by this definition, the definition of AI migrates and changes.
Is dynamic.
Is dynamic depending on the era we are in. And this is important and to keep in mind, and it should therefore not be surprising that many people understand something that is considered AI as a generative subsymbolic AI system.
So yes, and let's say we talked a lot about the office text systems and the different steps in this workflow, but we have already AI tools we could use here in the notary office, and we tried, let's say, 3 examples, and we want to talk about these 3 examples. So we tried contract drafting with an AI tool. We tried to have a validation of legal documents. Are they valid? Are they ready to send off to the commercial register, for example? And we have, of course, some kind of chatbot legal question answer machines. And we used Perplexity, for example, to try to answer questions, to try to draft contracts. We used ChatGPT from OpenAI to try to validate legal documents, to try to contract drafting and questioning. And what's very interesting, new is at this in this year is Frag den Grüneberg Beck Verlag. So they use a large language model. We don't know what kind of large language model they use, but this is the most important. So I thought I had this book here to show it in the camera, but it's not here. My colleague took it away. Sorry about that. But this is a question answering machine. And so I give over. So because we tried to test it and evaluate the results.
So as an example, we want to show you what our results were when we first tried ChatGPT. And we first tried completing the contract drafting task with ChatGPT. Our prompt was draft an application for the commercial register for the entry of all shareholder decisions made in the given shareholder resolution. So for context, the system had the shareholder resolution. It is literally a one-page resolution. It simply had the idea of appointing a new managing director. And as a hint, none of the company's current managing directors were dismissed. So only a new managing director was appointed. However, the system interpreted this completely differently, and the output included, so our contract draft that the system outputted included the dismissal of a managing director, which was not decided within the resolution. The text also lacked, I mean, this is a technicality in German law, but it lacked the declaration which is necessary for the entry of a new managing director, in which the appointed declares that they were not criminally convicted of crimes such as fraud. However, emphasizing the issue here, people decide, okay, we want a new managing director, and you ask ChatGPT to make a contract draft, and the draft then includes the dismissal of a previous managing director, which could have detrimental effect in practice if nobody would check this result again.
This is obviously not a good thing.
Yeah, so we came to the conclusion that this did not work.
Yeah.
Our second task we tried to accomplish with ChatGPT was contract validation. Our prompt was check that the given commercial register application. So now here we give the system a already drafted out contract commercial register application for a given resolution. This resolution was the same resolution as in the previous example.
Both was given.
Yeah.
The file for filing, the application, and the resolution, and the ChatGPT should only compare it. Let's say.
Yeah, and determine if the application includes all necessary declarations made in the resolution. So in the resolution, again, we have a appointment of a new managing director. As further information, this managing director has the power to represent the company in business, also with themselves as a representative of a third party. However, in the application, it stated that a new managing director is to be registered with the power to represent the company in business with themselves as a representative of a third party. So far, so good. But also, and with themselves acting on own behalf, which is a typical problem in Germany, considering Section 181 from the German Civil Code. And this is a detrimental mistake, because this would enable the managing director to act as the representative of the company and with themselves as their own private entity. And this is something that the resolution did not rule. So this is something that should be excluded from the power of representation. However, the output from ChatGPT in this case stated that the application was valid and contained no errors. This is incorrect. As per the shareholder resolution, the managing director is not allowed to act to represent the company and conduct business with themselves and on behalf. So,
and it was not so that the system tried out 100 cases and this is the only one who missed. No, so there were, so let's say, no cases which worked really.
So any examples we tried always had some form of mistake, more severe and less severe, but there were mistakes. And as our last example, this might be a little technical because it pertains to German law, but we asked Fragt in Grüneberg, and this is basically the interface you get with Fragt in Grüneberg. Our question was, find out if person A can withdraw from an inheritance contract with their spouse B, who now does not have full legal capacity. They had healthcare issues or health issues, by declaring their withdrawal towards C, whom is the son of A and B, and has power of attorney as a healthcare proxy to act on behalf of B.
So this was a real case in my office, and my assistant had to find it out manually and used the Grüneberg. So he used the book, I couldn't show at the moment, to find out how the solution of this case is. And after we knew how it is done, how we had to do it, we asked the Grüneberg, so the AI system of the same book. And so sorry about that.
But this is probably one of the most impressive examples, because in this case, for one, it was specifically created for this task we're using it with.
Yes.
For the previous example, you could argue we might have misused the AI in a way and didn't train it to do the task. And as it
was trained to write business Christmas cards, not to. Okay, sorry about that. So,
and as a second point, the AI had explicit access to the complete material within the Grüneberg. Not even lawyers have digital access to the Grüneberg, but this AI had access to the Grüneberg. And the answer the Grüneberg, Fragt in Grüneberg returned was, no, you could not withdraw from the contract, although the commentary explicitly stated that you could. So no deduction had to occur. The AI didn't have to reason to get to this result. It simply had to retrieve the correct section in which the answer was explicitly given, which it could not, because it was influenced too heavily by the remaining data that was given. So,
why did AI fail? This is the problem. And but this is your turn.
And so why did AI fail? To answer this question, we first have to look at the different types of AI. And now, reiterating our definition of AI, back in the day, you would see embodied AI as an AI. It was unthinkable that robots could work on a construction line, manufacturing line, but now it is an everyday occurrence and people just take it. And same goes for statistical AI. So currently, our main technological developments, which produce results that people would not have trusted computers to be able to achieve, would be symbolic AI and subsymbolic AI. And so we are going to go into the strengths and weaknesses of each of these systems, starting with subsymbolic AI. And as people have stated before, one of its main strengths is that it can process arbitrary text input. It doesn't have to. It doesn't require a formalized text input to achieve relatively good results, and it doesn't require the extensive formalization or prior work to have a knowledge base that I can touch on. And it can therefore be used effectively for analytical tasks such as pattern recognition, named entity recognition. Our previous speakers also mentioned named entity recognition, which is also widely used in the anonymization projects. And lastly, semantic search. Its main weakness, however, and we have seen this before, it does not take into account the semantic meaning of its input. Subsymbolic AI is an analogy to this would be We stop at a red traffic light if we drive with the car because we know there is a law that tells you you're not allowed to pass a red traffic light. Subsymbolic AI would also stop at this traffic light, but the reasoning for it would be, well, typically, statistically speaking, people stop at a red traffic light. So it doesn't reason, which then leads to the results of subsymbolic AI system being not robust and not reliable at all.
Yes.
Then let's go into the strengths and weaknesses of symbolic AI. Well, semantics matter for symbolic AI. The whole point of symbolic AI is to associate formal meaning to semantics that can be observed in text. It can therefore reason, and it can therefore produce reliable and robust results. The reasoning process is truly explainable. You can understand why the AI came to a specific output, and the reasoning process more closely models legal reasoning done by lawyers. You wouldn't stop at the traffic light because it's a statistical evaluation. You stop at the traffic light because you reason and you take rules into account. However, it has some weaknesses, and it cannot process arbitrary text input as subsymbolic AI could, and it requires extensive formalization or prior work to achieve useful results. Until a symbolic AI system has achieved its maximum utility and its maximum usefulness, people have to do a lot of prior work, more than you would have to do with subsymbolic AI systems, which is a drawback.
So, and at the end, this was the hypothesis of Diriger, which was, let's say, thought about in 2020. And so Diriger, the big project doing automated reasoning for modeling the workflow for filing company law problems in the commercial register. So we use all kinds of AI. This is the idea. And at the end, we have a hybrid system using statistical, symbolic, analytical, and generative AI. This is the main task of Diriger. So it's very interesting. At the end, if you want to use AI for legal issues, you have to be very reliable. You have to use metrics. So we want to measure how is the recall by analytical AI systems, how much let's say text spams do you find in a contract? How much text spams do you find in a court decision to anonymize it, for example? And the human in a loop doesn't help at all if your recall is only 30%. This person cannot have all information to, let's say, make it better than the machine gives the results back. So this is a problem. The first question is, how good is the machine and how bad is it, and how much manual workcraft do you need to get a good decision, especially in legal issues? So, for example, generative AI, we used to do some pseudonyms for the text spams we have to anonymize, for example. So anger and rage, this is the green project, is about the anonymization of court decisions. Now we do also anonymization of commercial register documents and a new form of let's say medical texts doctors write down after examining the patients. So at the end, this is the idea. We do research for legal issues because only using AI, generative AI or analytic AI, you can have coming from US will not help because it's not reliable. This is our message. And so the question is, what does the first part of our speech has to do with the second one? The first was office tech, AI ready, question mark. And the second part is, what is AI? How can we use it in this workflow? And now we have to bring these two parts of this speech together. So the question is, what is alpha?
Yeah, and is office tech in law firms AI ready? So going back to our initial slide, we can see our workflow diagram again. And we've mentioned that certain AI applications are better for certain issues. So you always have to have specialized AI systems for specialized issues, which leads to a more diverse software landscape. You have a lot of software solutions for specific problems, but it must be like this, so such that you can use AI in a specialized manner. So now you need to manage all of these software solutions to work together with each other. And this is the main question. This is what office tech has to achieve in the future. And so Alpha is TaskOx, which is a development by our company. And I mean, this shouldn't be an advertisement speech. Alpha could be any software that manages tasks and workflows, but we're trying to emphasize the importance of these management tools like TaskOx in the future. And we're going to see a steady increase, or a very strong increase in the amount of software solutions for specific problems using specific AI implementations. And as we have established, this is necessary to get good results for the specific tasks. And TaskOx has its goal of task management, workflow design and conception, resource management. You have to understand which resources are required for each step of the task chain, which resources can be given by AI systems. And one of its main parts is that it enables modularity in workflow automation. You want to have a modular workflow such that you can implement different AI systems that are specialized for their task.
And if your office tech does not provide the data you need for the AI application, it doesn't work. So this is the combination of office tech systems and AI tools.
Yeah, and it does so by providing interfaces and data management, and it therefore makes use of specialized AI software in law firms with this example. Just as a side note, our development reaches its beta phase at a halfway point of this year, and will probably be complete as a first version at the end of this year. And
we will test it in my office, the beta version, in the middle of the year.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, TaskOx itself also uses various methods of AI, statistical, symbolic, as well as analytical and generative AI. And it does so to achieve all of the intricate tasks of workflow management and achieve high results. So maybe as a conclusion to our presentation, we could say only if hybrid AI systems specialized on specific tasks are used and office tech allows the modularity, as we have established, such that these solutions can be implemented in workflows, automation with the use of AI will be possible. Otherwise, the overhead of implementing AI system is too large and you won't have any usefulness from it, and automation will not be possible.
Thanks. So if you like, contact us. So Friedrich Alexander Universität Auxilico, there are the email addresses and the websites. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Adrian family, for a comprehensive and very interesting presentation with practical use cases. Emil, Fitoš, I have a question regarding the usability of AI in Slovakia. Do we have Slovak large language models or language models ready for such solutions as we've seen here? What do you think? How far have we gone with the developing the language models?
Not very far. There are both from scientist sides as well as from company sides. There are demands for creating branch specifics or sector specifics subsets or language models, but we didn't get to a position where we have one. And especially in legal practice, I think this can be very useful. If not for other things, we have data. We have a lot of text. We have a chance to do this. Nevertheless, there is no attempt to initiate project like this.
Yeah. So I think that's a crucial prerequisite to implement such tools in Slovak law firms, to have a functioning and usable language model. Professor Schweighofer, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for this interesting presentation. My question is, how much of the research of the ICAL and URIX conferences you've used in your research, because you're coming to this quite similar and quite well-known conclusions? Thank you.
So I'm not sure if I heard it because it was very lazy. So
reuse of ICAL and URIX research.
Yes, we we try to keep up with these results of these two conferences, and our projects at the university. So our team is reading this, and we try to understand it, and so we try to have some influence for our project at the university. But at the end, this other thing, the office text system, the Auxilico problems, this is really, let's say, discussed and analyzed here in the workflow, everyday work in my office. So these are two different things, let's say. But at the end, I think this is not really a big research result. What's our closing remark? This is, let's say, this is an observation, but it should be emphasized, because our problem here at the notary offices in Germany is that everybody is talking about AI systems, and this is very interesting, of course, and interesting, but if you do not keep up with your office tech development, office tech system development, we will not be able to manage our demographic development problems at the end of the decade. So this is our let's say political remark. It's not science what we do here.
No, just a remark on that. And the city does on legal tech. There are a lot of tools available that you may use and consider as a problem. Then there's expertise available, but then you come to the legal environment, you find it's not as useful and not as easily adjustable as it is, and that's the big problem. But on the other hand, the ICAL conferences, they produce a lot of theory, but not that much practice. So it's a dilemma phase.
Absolutely. So this was the two parts of the speech. The first one was, let's say, office tech. This is workflow automation. This is business problems. This is a lot of startups try to help the notaries here in Germany, but it's an overwhelming number of startups and applications you could use. And on the other side, we have to do research for special German legal issues, because just to use generative AI models will not help us to achieve the precision we need in legal discussions and legal workflows. So I hope this is an answer.
Thank you.
Any last questions from attendees? If not, the next in line with this presentation is Magister Dr. Stefan Eder, partner from Benn-Ibler Rechtswälte. I think it's a law firm, and his topic will be challenges in the practical use of AI in law firms. Mr. Eder, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm trying to share my presentation.
Yes, we can see it and we can hear. Yeah, everything.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. Briefly to my background, I'm a partner here in the law firm of Benn-Ibler in Vienna, and I'm also a principal in a legal tech company called Cyfly. I'll explain that background in a minute. My personal education is that I've studied law and I've studied informatics, both here in Vienna. I wrote my master thesis on legal expert systems, which was a logic programming on the automated decision-making to decide which court might be competent on a particular criminal matter. That was quite some time ago, and probably that indicates to you that legal AI is probably around for a long time, but now it's getting some momentum. Besides being a lawyer and working in the field of legal informatics, I'm teaching that subject also at the University of Saarbrücken in a legal tech course in the postgraduate studies there. Benn-Ibler is a law firm that has been established some 15 years ago. We had been, prior to that, part of a large international law firm. I've had a large number of management roles there, and we decided to move out and set up a smaller practice. And from the very beginning, we focused very much on digitalization issues. Cyfly is a company that has been set up to develop the Austrian legal information systems on mobile phones. So there's the Austrian Legal Information Systems RIS, available on a mobile app. That was the initial project for Cybly. At that point, when the development was done, the information was not just copied over from the legal information system, but the decision was made to build up a knowledge graph. And that knowledge graph project led to a larger number of subsequent research projects, mainly Horizon 2020 projects in Europe. And we are, since 2014, actually running and building that knowledge graph. The knowledge graph is multilingual, multi-jurisdictional. You could import Slovak law in Slovak language and retrieve it in Slovak language on that graph. Currently, the legal information on the system is Austrian law, and it is the whole corpus of EU laws, the EU law in German and English. There have been also experiments with Dutch law, with Spanish law, with German law. In principle, the knowledge graph is very flexible in this respect and can be very efficiently run. More recently, over the last 6-7 years, we have built a number of legal AI applications around that knowledge graph, and we are using that in our legal practice as well. And that's actually the topic of my speech. Now, I'm very grateful to the previous speakers, because actually there was a lot of things explained where I can build on. So I think I can then very timely manage my presentations because of that background that you've already gotten. Now let me do one thing first. Let's dive into this issue of definitions of what is AI, because that is, in my opinion, one of the two key messages of my speech. One is AI is a multitude of things, and we need to use the right tool. And the number two thing is we should not forget about legal data management when we speak about legal workflows and the application of AI tools. Now you can see here there's a Stanford compilation of various definitions. I'm not diving into that anymore. We had definitions on AI already. There is the standard OECD definition at the moment, which is the most official definition you can get. And there is the definition in Article 3 of the EU AI Act. All those definitions do miss a lot of things, in my opinion. If I am asked to explain AI, then I usually start with, AI is a multitude of things. It is intelligent data management. It is various sets of algorithms that can be used and deployed for various things, right? You have rule-based expert systems. That was what I was actually working on initially. So Prolog programming, which we learned just in a presentation from a researcher this week, can be automated through language models, down to various heuristic and other applications. More importantly, I think for the legal profession, it is to understand that some of those tools, like let's say OCR, the reading and understanding of text and characters, or natural language processing, so transforming those characters into some set of rules and regulations and systems so that we can manage and operate and retrieve them. Databases, neural networks, where we can store that information for various things. Machine learning, where we learn certain processes, etc. These are all independent disciplines in a way, right? You're not seeing large language model on that sheet here. That is for a particular reason. A large language model is building on those technologies in a way. And large language models, to say, in the work we do practically and in the applications we run, play a side role, but they play a role. Now you can apply this technology in various areas, and if you are following the history, you will see that a lot of AI development actually comes out of pattern recognition of the medical sector, and more recently we see now, since 2012 or so, a more stronger development in the text sector. So I think when you need to have a picture of what AI is, you need to see it is a diverse set of various technologies that is being applied. And that's just for a background to understand where I'm coming from. Now, in my sort of world, we differentiate between generative AI, so large language models, if you want to have one example, and discriminative AI, which is actually sort of the more rule-based systems, which we are mainly deploying or in a combination. That can be translated into sort of, you have the more statistical models versus you have the more knowledge-based models, and then the middle ground is probably where our legal applications will be in the future from the practice we see at the moment. So there is no one size fits all, just mentioned that already. LLMs can do it alone. We had already a large number of arguments. A couple of things I'd like to mention because they're important in the legal context. LLMs do hallucinate by design. We need to be clear what hallucination is. Hallucination is not a wrong feature, right? Hallucination is a logical outcome because of certain data that the model is using, a certain input the model is using leads the model to a correct conclusion, which we call hallucination because it's not conforming to our expectation of the result, but not that the model is doing something wrong. The model is neither thinking or manipulating. Also, there are models that do that meanwhile. The model is following an algorithmic procedure and produces an output that is correct in the context of input and data and the algorithm. But it does not conform to the output. Why is that? You can easily follow that if you're, and that is an easy to follow example. If you see that models mainly hallucinate in long context, as in long document context or long text context, then you, let's say the margin of error in a statistics is something like 0.1%. If you multiply that 0.1% margin of error on each individual token or step in the procedure of a model coming to a conclusion, the longer it's calculating, the larger the margin of error will become, right? And then if the margin of error is already, let's say, 15%, then the chances that outcome is wrong in terms of what we think is right or wrong is a high likelihood. But LLMs also struggle with time, and time is a very important issue in lawyering, right? When you apply a legal regulation to a factual issue or a statement, then you need to know, for example, what was the legal regulation at that point in time when that issue occurred or has to be judged on, right? You don't want to have the most recent probably if the accident or criminal matter happened 5 years ago. So you want then the right regulation at that point in time. So time is an issue. LLMs are not databases. LLMs do not manage our data. So if we have a legal workflow, and let's say as we saw that example, information is collected, we cannot store that information in the LLM. We can train the LLM with that information if it might be helpful and if we are allowed to, but we cannot store and manipulate it. We need to store information separately. We need to store information separately in a way that we then, with artificial intelligence algorithms, can work on that information, manipulate means in that transform it in that context, and then we store it back again, right? So when you have this appointment of a managing director that we've seen, you have stored company information in your database saying there's a director A and there's a director B and they have a birth date and they have an appointment date and they have an address, etc. And then you appoint a new director C and you write the resolution automatically, which we have a tool that does that. But then you would like to extract that information again and write it back to your database and say, okay, the company has now 3 directors, A, B, C, and you have all the dates with respect to that directors, and you'd like to know, for example, the terms of appointment to have the knowledge when do you have to reappoint them, right? So that is not done within an LLM. And that is done within a database system that is corresponding and probably interacting with an LLM structure or another AI structure. LLMs struggle with rules and strict logic. Again, that is an issue of statistics and likelihoods. There are tools where people are trying to make LLMs work in that context, but nobody really successfully. The more logical thing is, and there's a very interesting project has been here at the Ministry of Finance in Vienna, where LLMs, for example, are used to build up logic, rule-based systems. And rule-based systems, expert systems, we heard the term already, expert systems are strictly following their logic. So you have there a result which usually should be correct, because if the algorithm was correctly implemented, it should work. Or you have no result because there's no logic in the system that deals with your request, and then you get a zero output. That is, for example, what we refer to programming in Prolog or in Lisp or similar programming languages. Yeah, LLMs are not confidential. The information you put into an LLM for training resurfaces. Whether or not you then have your own LLM in your own environment and it resurfaces there, even that can be incorrect, because if you're a larger law firm or accounting firm or a Ministry of Justice, there's a need to know restriction. So that if an LLM is trained on real life data that is not neutralized, then you have the risk that this data is surfacing with somebody else who's using the system as personalized data, right? So the confidentiality is another problem of those systems. That is why we heard so often in the previous presentations that anonymization is an important issue. But nevertheless, LLMs will be very helpful. Where I'm coming from, sort of the last 30 years of AI, we all have been struggling in getting data to train algorithms, to learn to build. Now with the internet and LLMs, we have tools that help us to make that integration. So LLMs are a great development and a great tool in the context of the wider environment. They are very effective and helpful in data analysis. They are helpful in text generation. They are helpful in supporting knowledge retrieval. They are helpful in natural language communication, to name a couple of examples. So that leads me to another important point I've already tried to make. We try to combine many AI tools to achieve a certain result, and that's very important in the legal context, because we want to have results of quality, we want to have transparent, ethically correct results, we want to have results that we can challenge and prove or verify, etc. The term under which this is scientifically known is compound AI. Compound AI means you pool together the right tools for a particular purpose. And the tools sort of were those I mentioned at the very beginning. Now, the other thing, and that's very, very important in the legal context, is what are our data, right? Many people think, I've already digitized if I have a scan of my letter or my contract or whatever, and put that scan into a system and store it electronically. But that is not data, right? The file as such might be data, and you might have some metadata to that file, meaning when you have created that file, etc. But you don't have any information about the context in that document. So when we speak in the legal context about data, we want to have the data that are in those documents. And at the moment, this is mainly unstructured data. Unstructured data meaning we have not explored the data. Mr. Messner made that point with the tagging and the allocation of sort of named entity recognitions, which means you find a place or a name or an occupation, etc., in the data, and you can identify that and match that. But I go even further. I want to get any information that is included in that document transformed in a legal structure into structured data. And structured data means I extract this unstructured data, maybe with the assistance of some of the AI tools. So we do this with OCR and NLP tools, and put that data into some structured form. Structured form could be, an Excel sheet is a structured data form, an SQL data form. We use knowledge graphs because knowledge graphs are better fit to represent legal information, because you can not only show information, but you can also show and give guidance to the relationship between different information points. And that gets you much further in the legal context. So what can we use AI for in a legal context? We can use it for data extraction and transformation from unstructured data into structured data. We can use it for pattern recognition, which is something we would be using when we try to understand workflows. And then we can move towards automating routine workflows based on structured data. If we have, and that's the big challenge, if we have all relevant domain information for that workflow. The big problem is, how do you know not only the data in the information sheet and this document, but the single steps that are done, as if I take the example from Mr. Adrian, how do you put together this document of appointing a managing director and making a filing and getting all this information from money laundering, etc., etc. So all these single steps need to be represented in a legal AI process to get to a routine workflow. But if we do that, and that are applications we are running at the moment, you can have online compliance management, you can have management of precedent documents and reproduce them for automated document creation. And going even further, if this example here from the insurance industry, which we discussed in a recent workshop, where you have an AI and you make a photo of your car and use that to upload it into the insurance company's system. And not only will this case be reported and acknowledged, but the insurance company would automatically get quotes from the next garage for picking up the car and doing the repairs. But that's at the very end of a long development road, which is ahead. One very important thing is, and I think also Mr. Adrian made that point, or Mr. Family Adrian made that point, is that we have single solutions for many things, but they do not work. And if you look into the legal tech environment, you will see that 95% or more of the companies that evolve, get stranded, burn a lot of money, but never end at achieving something. That has a reason. The reason is that there is no user acceptance. User acceptance in the legal domain, I see this here in my office, depends on, does the workflow really give me an add-on? Do I have something? If I have a piece of work where I need to feed the work into this in this application, and then I get an output which I have to copy and paste and move on in my normal process, that is something I don't want to do. I want to work with a process where I click a button, where I have certain data, I click a button and I have certain output, and then I probably control the output. But all the steps in between work automatically. And I'd like to have that data then stored in a way so that I can use it later. That needs a linking up of systems. It needs standardized interfaces. It needs certain standards, and there are standard efforts for the legal domain ongoing already. It needs workflows, it needs data, it needs collaboration between workflows and data and outputs, and a collaboration with the human person that then is interacting with that systems. As Mr. Messner said, in the legal domain, we would like to have a human who takes the final decision on whatever the product is. So let me move to some examples on what we are doing in our practice here with the technology we have self-developed on the Cybly side. One is, for example, automation of a limited liability company. Now, many people say, okay, that's an easy thing, but in reality, it is not. You need, like the example we saw, you need to collect data, you need to have documents, you need to have an execution of the documentation, you have a payment of a share capital, you have a filing of the documentation, you have a registration. And each of the single steps has tens, if not hundreds, of sub-steps in terms of workflow. So it is quite a lengthy process that you need to describe. And that process needs to transform in some digital workflow, right? So if you have all that information you need to, or you want to get, then you need to turn this, for example, in a questionnaire and get somebody to get the input. If you cannot get that data from elsewhere, I'm coming to that. Then once you have your data and your instructions, which is part of the data, where instructions is build me a company with 50,000 euros capital or 100,000 euros capital, and the company's purpose is this and that. So all that information, who are the shareholders, what's the purpose, what sort of clauses do I want to have, etc. If you run through that in the questionnaire, you can easily produce an automated document. We can do that for many years. You know, if you write a script in Word, you can also produce automated documents. So the production of an automated document is not really the challenge for informatic guys. And then you have an output, like you have articles of associations, you have resolutions, you have signature confirmations, you have an application to court. That is very, very rough what that process is. In reality, we need now to think what is the workflow behind it, right? We have some data which is stored somewhere, and we have some algorithm, and then we want to do something with that data. We file, for example, for registration with the court, but we also would like to file with the trade register. We would like to integrate this with our corporate housekeeping. We would like to have some time management. For example, if we appoint a director for 5 years, we would like to know in 4.5 years, okay, he's coming up for reappointment. We would like to have application filings for taxes or filing of annual accounts. We'd like to integrate that data in our compliance, like whether or not is the director appointed here a supervisory board member and shouldn't be a director because that is a conflict of interest and things like that. And that can go on and on and on, right? So when we speak about a legal tech application that is accepted by the users, we need to think longer term in broader context. Clearly, we build from smaller base because we don't have all these systems around, and clearly there is no, I at least do not know, any solution in the market that is following such a structure. But at the end of the day, the very important thing is the first thing you need to think about is the data and the data collection, the data manipulation through all that processes. And your data structure needs to be flexible enough to deal with all that later amendments to the algorithms of automation so that you always can use that structured data in the broader context. So that is the one thing. And you need to link up to other systems. We just had a case where we were asked by the owner of a large lake to explore all the information available on his neighbors. We had about 1,000 plots of real estate around there, some 1,500 legal or personal neighbors. And there is, in Austria at least, there's a lot of that information already in other systems. And as a neighbor, you're allowed to access the information on your neighboring real estate. And then sort of that gives you the idea that you have your data somewhere in the center, and then you link this to other information systems that are already available, like the land register, like the company register, LSR social insurance register, the trade register, or other registers. And you even go a step further, that's what we do at the moment in our knowledge graph, you add on private documents like lease agreements or other documents, right? That is sort of what we need to think about when we speak about automation in a legal practice, where we have a higher degree of automation and not some single steps here or there, but a whole process thinking that is relevant. And at least for Austria, speaking for Austria, most of that data and information is, at least for lawyers and notaries, available and accessible. The same for the ministry. A second example of what we are doing is legal data mining. We call it legal data mining. I bring you here the example of an index clause extraction. We did this on some 850,000 documents for a client who had acquired a business or several businesses and a lot of contracts. And they needed, for example, to know what are the client paying under long-term contracts and whether or not that payments were indexed and whether or not that index clauses linked to the general terms and condition are still valid and how the index can be calculated. That was all done automatically with AI tools. Again, not really with LLMs, but other AI tools. And at the end of the day, yeah, the important thing is the documents were all sort of mixed: PDFs, Word, Excel, emails with attachments, etc. What you do is, and that is what I meant at the very beginning, what is data? Data is everything I have in a document. The clause as such is data, the wording in the clause as such is data, and the content of that clause again contains additional data. So for example, here we have a consumer price index. We see that the indexation is annually. We see the months in which the relevant indexation should happen. We get the information, what is the date from somewhere else in the document, because we know when it was executed. We know the amount because we know the amount of payments that are made. We know the starting date. We can calculate the actual date, right? That is a process of where we work with the data. And you can expand that further into information. There, I think Mr. Messner and I, we have a joint project that is called evidence, because that word was used. You can extract that information from a larger pot of documents, right? So you can go into documents, you read those documents, and then you get out the information and store it in a knowledge graph. That knowledge graph helps you to make a representation of that knowledge, on the one side for text retrieval purposes and for information and rule retrieval purposes. And you also extract not only the document information, but you also extract the document metadata. When was the document last changed, or when was it originally created, if that information is available. And all that stored in knowledge graphs gives you then the opportunity to get much more information out of that pool of data. But you not only get the text out, but you get the relationships out, right? Who wrote to whom an email about what, at what time, and was that email before another email or after the email? What is the answering? What was the answer to that email? And what again was the content, and is the content relevant in a particular legal context or not? That is what we can do by using legal AI in a broader sense with the tools I mentioned above. The third example I would like to mention, which is an easy one we are doing on a more frequent basis, is automated compliance. Compliance information is nothing else that you collect on a more or less what we do daily basis, all new laws, regulations, judgments, etc. And you compile the output in a way that a compliance person gets a list of the compliance information that is relevant for that person in a particular context. That could be, if you're in the food industry, new regulations, which restrictions are there, what you shouldn't use in terms of food, or if you are in other industry, a particular judgment or a prohibition. And what you can do with that information, for example, we did that in the context with lease agreements. You, for example, can automate the change to your lease agreement, right? So if you have your lease agreement clauses as structured data, and you have a change in judgments and laws, and there's something relevant. In Austria, there was a judgment some time ago that said a landlord has no right to claim that the tenant paints the apartment if it's not extraordinarily used. Then sort of those provisions in agreements should have been changed, because we have a recent judgment that says if the provisions of a certain section in a lease agreement do not comply with consumer laws, the whole section is invalid. Not only the provision is invalid, but the whole section is invalid. So that is, for example, where automation could help at least point the finger at what the relevant regulation or the wrong behavior in a department or in a work stream is, if the work stream and the documentation is available as structured data. So to get on and to the end, that comes out of one of the Horizon 2020 projects we did. When we look at legal workflows, we have documents, we have public and official documents, we have certain standards and practices, but we have private documents and we have other data. We need to structure that data into a structured database, which is then able to help us on the various applications we want to do. That might be semi-automatic annotation, that might be recommendation, that might be automated linking of information, that might be summarization, that is translation, definitely. That was one thing we had in that Horizon 2020 project. That is search, that is extraction, that is Q&A automation, etc., etc. We are running a system architecture, which I'm showing briefly here, on top of which we now put an LLM structure. Means we have this knowledge graph information with a certain set of algorithms behind it, and on top of that, we put now a knowledge graph that is vectorized. So all the information that is in the knowledge graph is being transformed into vectors, and that vectors are being used to train and build a large language model that is then in particular used for user interaction. So the main goal, and we have been invited by IBM last year to test this, and that was quite successful. The main goal is you have a question to your data. The large language model helps you actually to translate that question into a prompt for the knowledge graph. It retrieves the information and gives you the information back in natural language, for example. So, yeah, I spoke about the use of LLMs already, so to speed this up, it's very important that we have workflow-oriented developments. Now, a couple of takeaways is, we need to see workflows. We need to see that there's no particular tool. There might be LLMs that are helpful in certain contexts, but they're definitely not the system alone. The AI we use must align with the workflows, because otherwise we don't have user acceptance. And yes, well-integrated AI systems increase productivity and reduces risk. And then, yeah, AI will stay, but then some warning for the lawyers. There are clearly regulations in the legal context that need to be applied for. And there's a link here on the European Lawyers Association guidance. There's also a German great paper by the German Bundesrechtsanwaltskammer on that context. So all the legal restrictions on privacy, client protection, confidentiality, limitations of use of data clients, diligence, transparency, etc., apply if you use those tools. So we need to keep in mind that these regulations apply, and that we also are subject, of course, to the AI Act. And then here a chart of what you could think about when you go about digitalization. Not going about that, we had been there. And one final recommendation: if you go into using AI in your practice, you need to have a plan. So think about it first. Don't use this if you don't have the necessary number of recurring events, because digitalization generally is something that is built to scale. It takes longer to build an application than to solve a single legal problem. But if you have built the application and you solve 1,000 problems of the same kind, you're much quicker with the digitalization, of course. And you're probably more accurate. That is one thing we saw on our data extraction issue, which we in parallel also had humans do. And the margin of errors of a human compared to what the machine does is significant, because of, you're getting tired, you overlook things, whatever. Your client, you need to have your people and get them on board. You need to have your clients to come along. If your client's not interested, forget it. And you need to understand what AI really is and manage your expectations. So get your information. And that's just a picture of how we work. We have two companies. So Benn-Ibler is a law firm. Saibli is a legal tech company. But we have a co-working group between the two teams where we have overlapping client instructions, for example, or mandates, where we work together on particular projects. And of course, we use the technology within our firm, for example, for know-how management and things like that. Yeah, then looking forward to have a discussion with you. And there's my CV at the very end, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eder. Do you have any questions from the attendees? If not, we can speed up to the last presentation. And it's a great pleasure that I can introduce Professor, Magister, and Magister Dr. Erich Schweighofer from University of Vienna with his topic, Challenges of Legal Education and Training in Legal Informatics, How to Become a Real Expert in These Fields. Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to share my slides, just find the... Okay. Yeah, because I just start before I fix it. I can't
take your time. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't find the button here. That's a problem of my system here. But I can start now with my speaking. Actually, when you ask yourself if law faculties produce these people, like Aurelius, Adrian, and others, they do this real work, must say no, they don't do. And oh, here it is. So I find it. So we don't do, and why?
Yes, we can see the presentation. Thank you.
I would like to give you some hints. The whole topic is going on since the 1980s, actually. And interestingly, the results are the same as that from Stefan Eder or the group of Adrian. It's not as easy as you may think, using tools in computer science and apply to the legal environment. There are many more issues you have to face. I will, from this outline, you see it's mostly what's new for lawyers. It's mostly methodology. It's not so much the legal work that changes, not so much in general, only that we now go to a different environment. So it's from handicraft work, very personalized work, to very intensive automated work. It's a bit like in the famous book of concerning the weavers. It's the end of where we do everything in a very individualized form. And the remark concerning Industry 4.0 is quite appropriate. I remember a note from the then president of the German Gesellschaft für Informatik, Ligesmai, is that Industry 4.0 is individual production at the cost of mass production. And that fits very well to the legal environment, but we are by far not yet there. Then concerning my person, the description is not correct. I work for the Commission, but I didn't never represented the Austrian position there. That's Dr. Gottwald is doing that. You see, there's a new book coming out from the guru of our field, Richard Susskind. He's actually a consulting firm as a professor. And he's also commander of the British Empire, so quite well in the British establishment. And he says artificial intelligence will replace traditional lawyers by 2035 because the services are easier, quicker, cheaper. And another remark that's mostly from the United States, from Mark Lauritsen, who was following this environment for a long time. And he has, besides his technology interest, some interest of improving access to law for poor people, not so well-off people. And therefore we see this productivity growth that reduces the cost of using lawyers, of hiring lawyers, and so there's an improved access to law. This is 1994. So you see, it's still a very long discussion on that. If you see knowledge society, for lawyers, we don't care that much actually, because we follow our clients, and if they do something special, different, we just learn what they do, and then we follow them and find legal problems and solve them by using our traditional legal dogmatics work. The problem is, and that's the recently died Simitis, that there's an information crisis in law, and that's true. With all our tools, brains and libraries, we cannot manage the very dynamic environment anymore. So quite soon there was legal information retrieval in the 1970s. Then the typewriters were considered insufficient. Then we have text processors. Then also the communication methods, not mail, but letters, but emails or uploading, downloading, quite heavily accepted. But nowadays it's mostly this kind of quite different knowledge work. So before we had the federal gazettes, the court reports, we had our files, paper files. Now we must have active knowledge systems. And then we can speak about artificial intelligence and law, about automation, instead of simple document generators, and also using large language models. We've seen from the presentations before how difficult it is, but this kind of work is really necessary. When you see the Knowledge Society for Law, it's actually mostly networked knowledge. And networked knowledge is a quite different way of having a brain and library. What you could do before, a brain is always very networked knowledge, but now you have to do it with using this kind of IT tools. And also what Steinmüller said already in 1993, the industrialization of intellect, of legal intellect. So that's a very slow movement. And actually, it's not going very fast. And also law faculties don't invest much. So most of the investment in the last 10 years is coming from the business side and also from the practice, saying we need some tools and we have something in the whole software industry, and they are applied to the legal environment with many problems. And you see here in particular summarization, document generation, advanced legal search, prompting techniques with developing. So besides communication, besides retrieval, text processors, we are not yet where we should be, and also retrieval needs a huge improvement because it's not good enough. When it comes to the legal problems, that we do in law faculties quite well, because for us, it's part of what we do. We follow society, and you see what the EU has done also in a cooperative environment for a long time. It's relevant for us, and we know the EU was not so very successful. We are not the best digital economy in the world at all, but at least we have better infrastructure, better training, and with much more regulation, maybe a bit too much. So the main problem for lawyers is always that we follow live events, social activities. And if you look like it digital, it's much different because their presentations are difficult, incomplete, and quite often too resistant to change. You see it in e-government quite often, but also in e-commerce. It seems to be that's the same, and it's just a different method, but in the very end, what analog happening is ongoing, easy to change, just happening, where in digital environment you have to rebuild it, represent it. And that's also the problem for lawyers. Before we did read the law and understand it. Nowadays we have to represent it in different forms. And also what's also important, much more knowledge. You see it from this here. Before it was a bit limited to what we have in brains and reports and official gazettes. Nowadays with digital, it doesn't matter anymore. So now we consider reusing not 1% of all judgments, but all judgments. So much more writings. So, and also with this large language models, we can do that, computer science can do that. So it's much more knowledge available that to be taken into account. Here you see a bit a list of new topics in law, and that's an additional list that we do at law faculties. That is a training ongoing, but using traditional teaching methods mostly. We add just new topics to the legal curricula, and that's actually the method of the law faculties in Germany, Austria for the last 30 years, also strongly supported by the information or IT lawyers, because they consider that's our discipline, and what software and IT, that's left to the computer science faculties. And therefore we didn't change much. We do it smooth like the Romans. We learn it, we understand it, and use it then for producing legal work, interpretations, argumentations, things like that. But the main problem is, as I see, that support tools are still now more and more relevant because it's too much knowledge. So you need not just books, you need a legal text corpora, digital representation with all relevant norms, also in the particular date, quite relevant. Then you need knowledge graph, ontologies, legal logic to represent it in different forms beyond text. And also visualizations are quite helpful because it's so much and our reading capacities are limited. Other tools can do much more. So when it comes to new methodology, it doesn't change actually. What we're doing is mostly it's too much knowledge. We need to actually automate or get using support tools for that. It's a representation beyond text, as I call it. So we have also then logical representations, ontologies, knowledge graphs, citations, all that what's relevant, but also summarized information, also vectors as representation of text, of documents are a bit like that. I've done a lot of research in that in the 1990s, and also good unity for neural networks anyhow. So what should we do more on training is not just saying in Austria we have this kind of textbooks of statutes and also court reports. We have to now getting a much better understanding what's legal system, what we have on databases, document types, structures, retrievals. But also on the other side, in the law firm, they have the other, maybe more important knowledge in the files, and that has to be properly structured, indexed, and also retrieved. And that's a bit the main difficult rule, because before you had everything in the brain of a lawyer or many lawyers. Nowadays you have to somehow formalize, do it to automate it. Therefore, what we have done before in the 1990s, in the year 2000, was much more training on databases, not so much on knowledge system in the legal unit. Nowadays, it's with the Google search, everything seems to be so easy that no knowledge is required. But as you've seen in the talk of Stefan Eder, all this what we developed, the document types, structures, techniques, metadata, that still comes back when you do actually more intensive, more in-depth research, and also if you would like to link this system to others. So it's quite relevant, and what you should do, I summarize it, so next, yeah. It's mostly what we now start, actually not we alone, it's also that was 10 years ago. Why not do some kind of programming trainings for lawyers? Why not do a bit lectures about algorithm data structures? Why not do more practical exercises on this non-textual representations? There are some courses, we also do it at Vienna faculty, but still it's not enough to get the proficiency. But we have great help, and Stefan Eder is helping and supporting and organizing it. This is kind of combination of hackathons and moot courts to have at least one semester dedicated to this using of new methodology in this environment. We'll see. It's for a small group, but maybe it's good for the very end, changing the legal system. So if we come then a bit more to that, was also legally relevant, not mentioned yet, we are now in cyberspace, not in the national legal system, and relevant neighbors or clients may be far away or competitors to your clients. Then also we have now quite strongly the electronic persons, digital representation of a natural persons or an agent. They're quite important. So we have to be more open as small, medium-sized states. there are other legal systems that matter, and very often we have to deal with digital persons, electronic persons, either by crime or not. So it's also this kind of legal system, much more text, much more law, soft law. So difficult to say what's relevant, what's not. That's also actually from the European Union. There's a lot of text and don't know what to do with that. You see here from this slide, very old actually also. So we have the problem, who is a person, who is not. What's before obvious is now a bit difficult to identify, because you don't know who is behind the computer. And it's an activity space that's relevant. There is still this ongoing work on the electronic identity and implementation. It's not as good as it should be, actually. And other methods are more prominent, also the Google or Facebook identities. But it will develop, and then we have somehow a quite reliable identity. Not yet. So it's this kind of training issues here. Actually, everybody uses it, but when it comes to problems, you need very specialized knowledge. And we had once a PhD on that, of someone who is an expert in this field. So it's we have to do more on that, actually, in the very field. So when it comes to conclusions, and I've a bit making it short, is here. It's we have to accept it's a different world, and we have to adapt it. So a lot of faculties try to adapt it, mostly in the IT law training. The other challenge is also the quality and the cost of legal services. So they have a bit to go down. It's not going up because the quantity will be more, because more people would like to use legal services, as already happens. But in the very end, maybe the same turnover, same workload for lawyers, hopefully, but maybe a bit not so much this boring task, more the high-level tasks. The main problem is this kind of new methodology. Nowadays, in the 1990s, nobody did know much about it, and it was some kind of a mystery. But on the other hand, nowadays we know Google and we know these tools and all kind of apps, so a bit more quite open to using this. But still, we're not proficient. That's a big problem. And when you hear Stefan Eder and others do something really good, it's very difficult. And in the very end, we have to start to do more training on that, also using the programming, using the LLMs, do more these advanced retrieval techniques, document generation, to make our young lawyers used to this new environment where I say you have to do many more master cases, either as a from the court side, but also from the law firm side, but also then have to use more time when it comes to real legal problems. When it will be, it's, well, Sasken says 2035. We're a bit more skeptical, Stefan and I, when we discuss it, but it will come, actually. It will change the legal profession very deeply. It's mostly what happened in other disciplines many years ago, the industrialization of the legal domain, and law faculties do that, and training is really required. It's not that our law faculty is the best one, just maybe if you come to the next Erich symposium in Vienna or Salzburg, you're welcome. We discuss these issues and try to keep the high quality discussion going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Questions?
Do we have any questions from the auditorium? No. So, Mr. Behol, do you want to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there was a question, but it was responded by Professor Schweighofer, by Erich, is about maybe the Irish conference, because I'm very thankful I would say to all this event, because should thank the first origin was really the Irish conference, which I attended, I don't know, 10 years ago. And you as a leading persons, you have been putting, or you still put all those experts now today they attended today. It's in one room, yes, even online room. And if you can probably tell us maybe some for the future in this regard, in the regard of the content of this conference, is how the IRIS conference will move on, what are your plans, and probably there will be some also interest to attend also from Slovakia for the next time for Vienna or Salzburg you mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, there was in the 1990s a group from the Slovak Ministry of Justice. As far as I remember, they came as a translator and they followed quite many sessions at that time. For us, we are a platform, so we have say red line. Let's say the main topic, this will be man-machine cooperation next year, but mostly we ask for submissions. We got about 120, 140, up to that. That's a bit the limit, so it's quite a huge conference, many speakers. And we discuss all topics of legal informatics, and one in particular also use of artificial intelligence, improving retrieval techniques, but also IT law. So if people come, it's German and English. If you come with translators as a group, it's also possible. We have done that, and normally it doesn't make much problems because you're in a small group in a bag, and that can be done. But in general, also, if you would like to organize some kind of workshops, sessions on this topic, you are welcome. It's so if we have a quality control, sure, but in the very end, if the quality is fine, we don't limit to particular topics or say this is not interesting. It's you are the stakeholders of this conference as participants and speakers. And it will be next year in February. It's 18 to 21, and it will be in Vienna or Salzburg. We have not decided, but depends also a bit on your vote. We'll have a call in the next weeks on that. So
definitely let us know. We'll help you promote the conference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. So let me thank all the presenters with their thorough and very interesting use cases, and also that they have found some time in their busy schedules to be here with us. I would like to thank also all the attendees that you have participated in this event. And lastly, I would like to thank Mr. Bell for facilitating this webinar, because without him, it wouldn't be possible to put together all those honorable esteemed guests today. I'll edit and render the video as soon as possible and send you the link in the upcoming days. And Mr. Fitoš, any conclusion?
Maybe not conclusion, but maybe a challenge to Slovak participants of this webinar. If you would like to discuss usage of other artificial intelligence or any other digital tools within your practice, within your business, do not hesitate to contact Slovak Center for Digital Innovation. You have already our email address in the invitation, or you can use email SCDI at scdi.tech, and we will definitely come back to you, and we will discuss whether we can help or how we can help you with your daily business. Thank you.
Yes, we have already participated in a couple of AI-focused projects. For instance, also we have participated in a visual inspection project for automotive company, and we also have helped with some funding, and so we are able to help you if you are interested or planning to implement artificial intelligence in your business. I wish you a pleasant lunch have a nice weekend, and expect the video from this webinar to be sent to your email addresses soon. So thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this webinar, and all the best.